Warning, the following is a graphic tale of sexual sex and is not suitable for children, the elderly, or anybody in between. It is not recommended that you or anybody else watch this video, especially if you are my mother. Seriously, Mom, stop watching this right now. Holy Shark Videos presents 50 Shades of Earl Grey, a erotic geriatric story by Neally. Miss Jane Witherbe liked to go on walks around the block she had lived on since she was a little girl. Always being the social type, she would stop at random neighbors' houses and have long chats about the going-ons of the neighborhood. On one of her social visits, she ran into her friend from primary school, Margaret Thacker, who informed her, "Poor old Inez had a stroke last week, leaving that dear sweet Bill Hombolt all alone in that big house they had bought after they were married so long ago." Miss Witherbe always had a fondness for Bill and Inez Hombolt and spent a second recalling when her dear ex-husband Luther, who had died, was still around and the four of them went on a resort fishing trip in rural Canada. "That's too bad," Jane said. "Maybe I'll bake him a strudel and pay poor Bill a visit to let him know I'm thinking about him." "I think that is a grand idea and will surely raise his spirits," replied Margaret. Later that day, Jane Witherbe came right up to Bill Humboldt's residence and knocked chirpily at his door. Jane waited a bit, and after a beat, Bill opened the door and explained, "You know we eat dinner at 6:15. Why are you bugging us at this hour?" Jane was taken aback at first and then said, "Oh, Bill, I'm terribly sorry. How forgetful of me. It's your old friend, Jane Witherbe, from down the road. I heard about dear dead Inez, and well, I baked you a strudel." Bill looked down at the circle wrapped in aluminum foil that Jane was holding and said, "That's all right." But Jane would have none of it and walked right past Bill into his home. Jane knew the layout of the house well and took the strudel directly to the kitchen. She noticed on the table was just a can of pea soup with a spoon sticking out of it. "Oh no, Bill," she thought as Bill followed her into the room. "Is everything all right, Bill?" she asked. "Dr. Torres changed my prescription. He said the previous one didn't agree with me." "Oh, well. While I'm here, let me at least fix you a decent meal." "That's all right," Bill said, but Jane would have none of it and was already pulling ingredients out of the fridge and began preparing something. When Jane was done, she fixed up 2 bowls of homemade beef stew and set one down in front of Bill. "I said that's all right, damn it!" But Jane would have none of it. "Oh, shush up and eat," which Bill did. As they both sit across from each other making slurping noises, Jane got a good look at Bill through her spectacles and thought to herself, "He is as handsome as ever." She watched his broth dribble down the side of Bill's mouth and splashing all over his chest. Bill caught her staring and said, "Something on my face?" "Oh, it's nothing, Bill. It's just I need to be excused to use the lavatory." "You know where it is." Jane got up and rushed to the bathroom. When she got there, she took off her spectacles, ran the faucet, and splashed her face with water. She grabbed the towel that was hanging from the cabinet, but must have pulled too hard because the cabinet door sprung open. She heard something fall out of the cabinet and into the sink. She wiped off her face, put her spectacles back on, and saw a bottle sitting in the sink. She lifted it so she could read. Clearly written on it was Viagra. Jane almost dropped the bottle back into the sink. She was so taken aback. Her cheeks beamed bright red, and without thinking, she quickly stuffed the bottle in her pockets and dashed out of the bathroom. Jane came back just as Bill was finishing his bowl. She cleared the table and began doing the dishes. "I had a little spill in your bathroom," she said. "These old legs aren't quite what they used to be." Bill replied, "They look fine to me," causing Jane to blush. Then she looked at the counter to her left, where the strudel she had prepared was sitting. That's when Jane got a funny little idea. She pulled the bottle from her pocket and pushed 2 pills into one of the pieces of strudel, and prepared a plate for Bill. "Time for dessert." Bill ate the strudel quickly. Then 30 to 45 minutes later, the Viagra took effect. Jane noticed the large bulge in Bill's jeans and began to laugh giddily. "What is it?" Bill asked. "Oh, Bill, you have a woody." Bill looked down to discover he did have a woody. Jane then giggled some more and admitted to having put the Viagra on his strudel. "Well then, might as well make the best of it." Bill stood up and then slowly took off his belt. As soon as his belt came off, his pants flew down to his ankles, revealing his gray-stained boxers. Jane watched as he pushed his hands down the front of his boxers and began to shine his woody. Then, without thinking, Jane pulled his boxers down and saw his full woody.
And she would have all of it.
Jane began to remove her brassiere. As she let it fall off her, her bosom slumped and dangled there like a pair of socks that had been filled with sand. "All right then," Bill said eagerly, and pushed Jane down to her knees. Jane moaned, as her legs are not what they used to be, and it was very strenuous on them. Jane removed her dentures, placing them on the floor beside her, and began to gum Bill's woody as if she was eating hard candies that had been sitting in the bowl for 3 years. Bill said in the heat of ecstasy, but Jane kept gumming. Bill reached down and lifted one of Jane's slumping breasts and rolled it around in his hands. "Oh, that nerve," Jane said, her mouth still full of Bill's woody. Bill let Jane's breast flop back down and slap against her belly, then grabbed onto her shoulders and pulled her up, letting his woody slide out of her toothless gums as she arose slowly and disgracefully. Bill then spun Jane around, bending her over the kitchen table, knocking the finished bowls of stew off onto the floor. He grabbed Jane's big round buttocks and with both hands jiggled it around like a jello mold. He then tore her dress and underwear down around her surprisingly thin ankles. He then slumped over behind her and inserted his penis in between her saggy vagina and started pushing himself against her as hard as his stiff legs would allow. His sloppy, saggy balls flapped back and forth, banging against Jane and sometimes the table. With each thrust, Jane let out a, "Oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my."
If you're jerking off to this, then you're a goddamn weirdo.
"Oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my." And then Bill shot his load of ejaculate and spiders deep inside of Jane, because she's old and can't get pregnant, so why worry, am I right? But at that same moment, Bill felt a sharp pain run across his left arm, and he felt his heart literally explode inside his chest. Bill's body started to spasm, and then he fell over on Jane's back. Jane tried as she might, but she could not get out from underneath Bill's crazy old dead body. It was 3 days before somebody found Bill's rigor mortis-laden body inside and slumped over Jane. Paramedics had to bring the jaws of life to separate them. The funeral was held on Thursday. A small crowd was gathered around Bill's open coffin. As Jane walked up, she could not help but notice Bill still had a woody. She kissed her hand and pressed it gently against his rock-hard grandpa dick, as if to say, "Goodbye, forever."
Holy shark.
If you liked this nonsense that you just watched, then you can subscribe to me somewhere. If you want to leave a comment, you can leave it down below, or you can tweet at Neally. And I've been lip syncing